Hello, and welcome to our show for the love of animals. We have a special two-part series for you today. If you're an animal lover or a quilt lover, you're going to love the information we have for you about animal quilts. I'm Darleen Pigford.
And I'm Greg Baur, and I want to tell our viewers about a couple of upcoming shows. One called Home Alone. We'll let you think about that one a little bit. And we also have one on wildlife rehabilitation, which I think you'll find very, very interesting. But as you said, this is a special show today, Darleen. What are we doing today here at the Quilt Museum?
We're down here at the Museum of the American Quilter Society, and we're going to be taking a look at some wonderful quilts that have animal themes. We're so glad that we have this museum here in Paducah, Kentucky, and we want to highlight it. And if, like I said, if you're an animal lover or if you're a quilt lover, you're really going to love part 1 and part 2 of Quilts for Animal Lovers.
And you might even be both of those.
Absolutely. That's even better, Greg. Well, let's introduce our guest, Greg.
We have with us today Judy Schwender, who is the curator and Director of Collections here at the museum. Thank you so much, Judy, today for sharing time with us. And why don't we start, what exactly do you do as a curator and a Director of Collections, if you will?
Well, a curator, the word curator means to care for something. And I basically care for the quilts that are in the Max collection. In caring for them, I make sure they don't hang too long. We rest them periodically. I make sure they're folded correctly when we store them, and that generally they're well cared for. And then I'm also the registrar. And as registrar, I take care of all the documents relating to the quilts and the quilt makers. And I have to know where all the quilts are at any given time. Basically, you know, I'm the person that, you know, if you say, where's Pandas Around the World, which is this quilt, I can say, it's in the gallery, or it's in storage, or wherever it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And what kind of records would you have to keep about a quilt?
For instance, we keep deed of gift, and that's the document that transfers ownership of the quilt from whoever owns it to the museum, because you have to be able to provide proof of ownership.
Okay, is that a title or a deed?
It's a deed.
A deed, okay.
It's a deed. And it's for the physical property of the quilt, because there's also the intellectual property of the design, and that is actually owned by the quilt artist.
Okay.
Even though we physically own the object, we do not own the design. And they will retain that right, the owner or the artist will retain that right for, I think it's 70 years past their death. And so we ask them to sign an agreement with us that we can use, you know, an image of the quilt for purposes such as this show. If we would decide we'd want this on a mug or a mouse pad or a postcard, we would request specific permission for that use.
All right. All right, so let's get started with this quilt behind us. Tell us about this quilt.
Well, you know, I've never seen a panda in real life, but I feel like I know pandas really well. This is called Pandas Around the World, and it's by Shirley Kelly. Shirley's one of our favorite quilt artists. She's from Colden, New York, and she was an art teacher for some 30-odd years. And one of her strengths is taking animals and making them do things that are particular to their species. If you look throughout this quilt, you see pandas laying on their back and eating eucalyptus, and you see them kind of tumbling and just
having a good time.
Being pandas, yeah, having a good time and being pandas. And it's a real wonderful study in, you know, the black and the tan and the grays. It's for animals whose eyes are in this black, and you know, there's no eyeball, so to speak. There's so much expression. And I don't.
Now that you point that, you're right.
You know, so Shirley is a real genius for managing to achieve that. And we had talked about this earlier, that I thought this was stones quilted into the borders here, but these are actually panda prints. So this is as if pandas had walked through this little border.
All right.
Wow. Now, is this hand quilted?
This one is machine quilted.
Oh, this is machine quilted.
But it is hand applique. Shirley does hand applique. So she combines techniques, and that's not unusual nowadays.
Oh, it is? Okay.
About how long did it take her to make this quilt?
Any idea?
Oh, you know, I don't know, but I would venture to say, knowing how much effort Shirley puts into things and her composition and so forth, easily a year and a half. You know,
wow.
so,
Almost full-time work
yeah,
with it at that
yeah.
point.
Well, it is absolutely gorgeous, and she has certainly captured the nature of pandas.
Well, one of the other neat things about it is she went with her grandchildren to the National Zoo and saw, who is it, Ling Ling and Sing
Yes.
Sing there,
Uh-huh.
and that's what, this
her
is
the
what came out of
inspiration.
it. So she really did her homework.
Yes.
And plus, I think probably enthusiasm of her grandchildren played
Oh,
into this.
absolutely. That will do it all the time.
Oh, yes.
There are quite a few pandas in this quilt.
Many pandas. As I said, pandas around the world. You got to have a lot of pandas to go around the world.
It is a gorgeous quilt. Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, we have a number of very interesting quilts to look at today. What's next, Judy?
Oh, let me think. Let's go look at an elk.
All right.
That sounds like a winner to me. Well, Judy, you mentioned the quilt with the elk, and we understand that this is done by a quilter from local area, Cadiz, Kentucky.
Oh, yes. This is a wonderful quilt with a bull elk, and this is by Shizuko Hana Hill, and she is from Cadiz. And, you know, she was really daring, because when you piece a quilt, number one, you usually don't use 19,000 plus little pieces of fabric, which she did. And then once she had it all together, she and her husband decided they liked the back side of the quilt top with all the seam allowances showing. They liked that better than the front.
So we're seeing the back of the quilt.
No, you're not seeing the back of the quilt, you're seeing the back of the quilt top.
Top, that's
Yeah.
what I mean.
Okay. So actually, if you looked on the back of this, you would not see the other side of
Right.
this. Okay.
Because of the- right.
Because you have the batting and the quilt backing.
Gotcha.
Okay. But she machine pieced this and she hand quilted it, but it gives a wonderful, almost rug-like texture or a,
Yes, it
or a
does.
watercolor effect, you know, because it just kind of blurs it just a little bit. And if you've ever been around elk, when they're bugling, and we just, you know, we have elk and Land Between the Lakes, and
Right.
they're taking those down to Tennessee, trying to bring the elk back down there. It's quite an amazing sound. They sound quite adamant that they want to do what they want to do. And what amazed me was when I got to really looking at this, she has this wonderful zigzag pattern in the background, and I thought, you know, that's like sound waves.
Yes, it is. Yes,
And
it is.
I
you
think
know,
it is.
elk bugling, you can hear that like a half-mile away. So it really does carry. So, you know, we don't, typically sportsmen don't think, oh, the Quilt Museum when they're
Right.
thinking about, you know, game animals. But this is a really wonderful piece that
Well, it sure is.
she really executed well. And it took her about 1,200 hours to make the quilt.
Well, any man should be proud to have this in his den,
Oh,
right?
I think so. You know the colors in the border. She has this wonderful plum plus rust in this kind of tealy green, and she brought that out so well because there are purples and so forth.
Yes.
These plum shades in the elk and more teal, and it's beautifully composed. And like I said, she was really brave to use that back side of the quilt top, and it just worked wonderfully.
It just gives such a lovely texture to it.
It does. I have to try this sometime, but I'm not going to do it myself with 19,000 pieces or whatever, however many she did. That's a little too much for me.
Well, maybe let's move along to some of the miniature quilts that you were talking about, Judy.
Oh, okay, then let's go look at a cigar.
Oh, that sounds like a winner. Judy, this looks like a very interesting quilt. It's a small one, but it has a horse on it, named Cigar, I guess. What can you tell us about this one?
Well, this is another quilt by Shirley Kelly.
Okay.
She and her father were really interested in horses. Shirley used to accompany him when he would go to tracks and chat with trainers and so forth. So she really likes portraying horses in her quilts. And this one shows a horse just at full gallop, ready to win that race, and the jockey. And it's a miniature quilt, and so it means it's not just a small quilt. It means that if you would blow it up to the size of a regular bed-size quilt, everything would be in proportion. So, and that really works for this. But I really like that the jockey is just, you know, it's not, even though this is about animals, I mean, humans are
Right.
animals too, and this
Yes.
guy really wants to
Yes.
win, and it looks like the horse is going to help him. So,
It has such a lovely texture to it.
Yeah, and
how did she do that?
Well, she did the quilting back in the back. This is called meander quilting.
Okay.
And she has 2 different scales. She has a small scale in the border and a bigger scale in the background. And that's just so different from the rest of it. And then she's got all different things going on down here in the dirt. And it just accents the smoothness of the horse itself. And here again, she's done machine quilting and hand applique.
Point out, where's the machine quilting and where's the?
It's this
applique.
meander,
The meander, okay.
Yeah, the meander's the machine quilting. And then all these pieces, and how she does this, I had no clue, but each of these sections of color is appliqued by hand to the base.
Oh.
So she's really analyzed how she's going to put this together.
Well, I just think the texture in that is just absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
And it's just, you know, it's a good composition because you've got these 3 stars arcing this way, and then this comes down,
You're
and
right.
it follows through with that line of the 4, you know, the front leg. So well, like I said,
Good composition.
good composition. She taught art for 30-some years, so she knows composition.
The only thing lacking is that was not done in Kentucky, right?
Yeah. I really wish we could get somebody that would do Kentucky horses.
We'll have to get her to do one of a Kentucky horse, right?
Yeah, we'll just have to ask her about that.
Well, it is absolutely gorgeous.
Would you like to see another miniature?
Yes,
With
I
animals?
would.
Okay.
Yes, very definitely.
Judy, get your magnifying glasses and tell me about this miniature quilt of 50 animals? 50 birds?
50 birds. This quilt is by Pat Hawley, and she and her sister Sue Nichols, we have 2 of their quilts, full-size bed quilts. And they are very much noted for their machine work. This was completely done on the machine. It's machine quilted and machine appliqued. And there are 50 birds on this little quilt, which is about...
oh, my word.
It's about, I don't know, probably about 11 by 12. It's pretty small.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And how she's done this is she's used fusing web, and it's like a plastic that you put on the back side of the printed fabric, and then you press it with an iron to fuse it to that fabric. You peel the paper backing off, and then you cut out your shape and lay it on your ground. In this case, this kind of a tiger lily orangish ground, and then you fuse that shape in place. But then she's gone around and she's done very, very tiny machine applique stitches and little tiny machine embroidered or stitched little birdie legs.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
That's amazing to me.
It's so fine, and they've really made excellent friends with their sewing machine.
They certainly have.
And the 4 peacocks on this piece are just adorable. Instead of trying to do a whole bunch of detail on those, she's really just emphasized the eye at the end of each feather and kept it fairly simple, but you can look at that and know that it's a peacock. And we were talking about maybe this is a cardinal, and I think this is a blackbird. So she's used all kinds of small scale prints too, which really, really suits the scale of this tiny quilt.
Yes, it does.
Oh, but it's just so small. I'm just in awe of it.
Yeah. One of the things too with the people that are creating these pieces, the miniature pieces, you have to have almost an obsessive compulsive kind of personality to really get into these.
You have to be very dedicated.
Very dedicated,
yes,
to do these little tiny pieces. But one advantage for our visitors is that we do have magnifying glasses at the front desk that they can borrow during their visit to get a better look at details of the quilts. Not only miniatures, but the regular quilts.
Well, that is an excellent tip.
Oh.
Gorgeous quilt, just amazing. Well, why don't we take a break now and let our listeners and viewers get a paper and pencil so they can get show times both for Channel 2 and the website.
And we'll be right back to look at more quilts. Welcome back. Judy, this quilt is very interesting. Are we going to the dogs with this one?
Yeah, I think we are going to the dogs, and we're going to maybe more dogs than you might first think are here.
Okay.
This is a quilt called Barking Up the Wrong Tree, and it's by Sharon Malik. I think if you take a look at the whole quilt, you'll find that there's not just this, you know,
There's
one dog moving up the other tree, but there's 4 hidden dogs.
Okay.
All righty.
And it's quite fun to have people stand here, especially children. Here, and it's very hard to have the little ones, you know, not when they point, not
to touch.
Not to touch the quilt.
Yes.
But this always pointed out to me too about how natural coloration in wild animals lets them blend into their surroundings. You know, and of course, dogs, because they've been bred by man, they tend to lose that. But in this case, she let them revert to a natural color.
Oh, that is fascinating.
And this is done all on the machine.
Okay.
There's machine quilting with trees in the background and bushes and this kind of vine and just ground in here. And then she's done machine applique, stitching down all these different colors and pieces of fabric to delineate. For instance, this is one dog right here.
All right.
Here's his hind leg, and then here's his paw. He's kind of laying down, and his tongue is hanging out. He's taking a rest. And then there's another dog, and he's up here, and he's kind of sitting on his haunches, and he's just kind of checking out the scene to see what's happening over here. And then you have the dog who's also checking out the scene, but we can't see his face, so he really blends in. This dog is usually the one that people find last. And then it's interesting to me because the ears on all these dogs are laying down, and then you have the dog over here. There's more of a German Shepherd type in his ears.
His ears are very pointed.
They're perked up. So,
what an interesting design.
So quilters really can pull on any part of their world to you know, to create images and to create depth and really just to pull you into their world.
Their creativity and imagination from what we've seen is just fantastic, isn't it?
It is. You know, cloth has such a totally different feel from paint.
Yes.
And I think we can all relate to cloth because the first thing we do when we get in the morning, we put our clothes on. So we all know cloth, but how many of us have really played around with, say, oil paint?
Yeah.
But this is a favorite with the children and
adults.
And adults, you got that right.
And animal lovers or dog lovers too.
It's one of my favorites.
Yes, it is absolutely gorgeous. And you want to touch it now. I know I'm not supposed to, but
Yeah.
it's just got, all of them I see have just such good texture. So.
You just want to pet the dog.
Yeah, I want to pet the dogs, right.
Well, we have another quilt, but you don't want to pet these animals, but you want them to race right off the painting.
All righty, well why don't we go take a look at it.
Okay.
Well, now, Judy, it looks like we have a picture of a horse here. It looks more like a portrait than a quilt.
Well, that's why I said it was a painting, because what we have is a painting of Aladarn affirmed that's hanging on a stone wall with a table in front, with a journal open to clippings about Preakness Win and Derby Triumph, and then another photograph of affirmed. And this is when affirmed beat Aladar by a nose.
Oh, okay.
And this is another quilt by Shirley Kelly. So
from New York, right?
Of Cold New York, who did the same, the cigar in front.
Right.
Yes. And one of the things that Shirley laughs about is that she's done enough horses that people say she's the lady that does dirt. Because she's real good at having horses kick up dirt, and and Shirley's quite humorous about it.
That is so good.
Our horse racing fans will very much enjoy this one.
Well, you know, it's funny because we get a lot of comments on this, and then everyone wants to know, well, what's with the flowers in the vase?
Okay.
And I say, well, you have the roses, and that's the Run for the Roses, which is the Kentucky Derby. And you have the carnations and black-eyed Susans, and those are from the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. So you have the Triple Crown.
All right.
So Shirley really tells a whole story in this.
Yes, she does.
She does.
And once again, she's done hand applique on all the pieces, and she's done machine quilting in the background, and just put it all together really beautifully.
Oh, it certainly is.
And she had some troubles with the flowers at first because the carnations apparently they just kind of looked like tufts of Kleenex or something. at one point, but she mastered that.
Well, you never know it from the end result.
Oh, and
The roses are just gorgeous.
and you know, it's funny because I think about the big wreath that they put around the horse's neck, you know, and I just think, oh, you always wonder what's on the horse's head. Do they know that this is the way it should be? You know, it's hard to tell. I mean, I don't know. I've never been around a thoroughbred horse, but they sure are. And this, you know, they sure are racing here. And even the jockey, see, he's just slightly up off his the saddle there. So
extremely realistic.
Yes, it is, and it's huge.
Oh, it is. It's a big quilt, and
It's a large quilt.
Perfect for Kentucky.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Shirley donated this to the museum.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay.
She said, I think this needs to be in Kentucky.
Well, I
with
think
you
she
all."
is right, and we do thank her again for that.
Yes.
This is gorgeous.
Well, speaking of realism, you mentioned a jungle quilt.
Oh, yes.
Can we take a look at that one?
Yes, let's travel to Java.
All right.
Well, here we are at the jungle quilt, Judy. Tell us about this one.
Well, we've now arrived in Java.
Okay.
We were at a horse race, and we've just kind of
Moved on.
We're in Java now. And this is a quilt by Audrey Sells. It's called Javanese Jungle. And this was her first attempt at applique, pictorial applique, which I'm very impressed. She did adapt it from a work by a Dutch artist, but I think nonetheless she still had to select all her fabrics and come up with her details. And my gosh, we've got, oh, let's see, tigers and elephants. I call this a leopard.
Okay.
And then we come around to the zebra, antelope, or elands, or gazelles, more elands and gazelles, a pelican, elands and gazelles, and just, like you said, a parade of animals parading around. And all this has such a nice, like, lively feel to it because
it does.
The foliage is very imaginative, and it comes off with these orange little flowers, and they're just like little fireworks almost going off. And then we have this very simple, very, I don't want to say crude, I'm going to say plain, simple border treatment, and that really echoes the batiks you see from that part of the world. Java, a lot of in Indonesia, they do batiks.
Oh, okay.
You know, wax resist fabrics, and this is a really good representation of that kind of art because it has the foliage at the top has that real, I don't know, kind of batik look to it even. And oh, the ear of the elephant.
Oh yes, I thought that was such a nice touch.
This is I'm not going to touch it,
can't
but
touch.
you can put your hand underneath. And this is a three-dimensional ear, so it adds a little bit more realism to that wonderful elephant.
Just adds a sparkle to it.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So there's something going on in there for just about everybody.
Everybody, yes. These would not make your typical household pets, however.
Oh, I think not.
No.
But for a quilt to hang on the wall, and, well, gee, if you could have one like this for your bed,
Oh.
that would be fun.
You can bring the jungle into your own environment.
There you can definitely do that.
I think a child would certainly enjoy this on
And
his or her
adults.
bed.
Adults,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Okay. Well, let's take a break now and give the viewers some information about the American Quilter Society. So get your paper and pencil. We're going to give you location, address, hours, all kinds of information so that you can come and visit the museum here in Paducah, Kentucky.
Let's move now from Java to Nova Scotia with puffins. Judy, tell us about this gorgeous quilt.
Well, you're right. We're in Nova Scotia. Shirley Kelly's relatives, her relatives are from Nova Scotia area in Canada. and she went up to visit relatives and started making sketches when she was on Cape Breton Island, and thus we have puffins. So she not only does horses and pandas, she does puffins. Once again, she's done hand applique and machine quilting, and if you look on the rocks, there will be sections where there's meander quilting, and then there's open sections, and really that's how rocks are. You know, they're rough in areas and smooth in other areas. And each puffin has just, I don't know, a great expression. Each one's a little tiny bit different. If you kind of look here, this gray shape on this puffin is slightly different from this one. And that's really how puffins can tell, you know, one from their neighbor. And they're all roosting, and they come together in these big, you know, groups, and they're being very puffiny. And this one right here seems to be everyone's favorite, and I think it's because he's looking directly at the viewer, and he's got his you know, his wings up as if to say, you know, what are you doing here? This is our place. And one isn't even looking at the viewer, and he's checking out what's going on up there, and they're just being puffins. And it's funny too, because everyone that comes in the museum, when they glance at this at first, they go, oh, penguins.
Yes.
And I go, no, it's not penguins. Go look. And they go, oh, puffins. But Shirley really brought all her skills to the fore with this. And great, you know, they have great colors with their red feet.
Yes.
And she did just a wonderful, wonderful, you know.
I didn't know you could make gray look so good.
Oh, I know. So I guess Shirley not only does dirt well, she does rocks well.
She does rocks very well too, doesn't she?
Oh,
okay.
But we're happy to have this one because here again, it really, the adults love it, the kids love it, and everybody starts going, oh my, which one's your favorite? And then these ones up here almost look like they're sleeping.
Well, Judy, we really do appreciate what you have done for us
So far.
For the love of animals. Our tour of the museum here in Paducah is just wonderful.
And we're not done.
No, we want our viewers, as we end part 1, we want to remind you to tune back in for part 2. So, as usual, I'm Darlene.
I'm Greg, and telling you to give your pets a little extra love today and every day.
But don't touch that quill. Bye.
See you next time.